Okay, here is where I'm at with the conduit and wiring so far. This 1.25 inch pipe nipple is longer than I needed, but it's just what I had on hand. It's there to show how the access box is attached to the generator case. I actually had to drill this hole for the 1.25 inch conduit because I want to run heavier gauge wire than what will fit inside 3/4 inch conduit. The generator is equipped with a 60 amp breaker, and if I want to allow 60 amps to pass through the transfer switch, I need to run 4 gauge wire. This was the previous hole for a 3/4 inch conduit, and I'm going to use it for my ground cable and ground rod. I'm hoping to find a 3-pole transfer switch so that I can switch the neutrals as well as the hot lines. This offers safer operation for anyone who might be servicing the system in the future. So here I started to install the ground rod. It is an 8-foot ground rod, and since we've had a lot of rain, I should not have much difficulty driving it into the ground. What I want to achieve here is to line up the ground rod with the down-facing hole in the access box and leave enough of it to sit a few inches up into the 3/4 conduit. I'm going to now keep pounding in the ground rod, and I'll get back to you when I get it in place. Now that the ground rod is in place, let's check how it lines up with the access box. It looks pretty good. The access box will thread onto the conduit nipple like so, and then the downward conduit will go over the ground rod and thread up into the underside of the access box. My ground cable will feed past the ground rod in the conduit and then be clamped to the ground rod just below the end of the conduit. I attached a new larger ground clamp to the generator chassis, and the ground cable is going to feed through this access box, then out and down like so. Interestingly, when I was working off to the side, I happened to glance back toward the generator and spot a white wire tucked along the fold of the case. I had not seen it until then, and I was pleasantly surprised to discover that the generator did have a neutral wire. Up until this point, I thought I was going to have to use the ground wire as the neutral. At this point, I can't really go much further until after the on-site meeting with the engineer from the power company. After that meeting, I will know better if I will be going straight over and up into the right side of the meter box, or if I will be going at an angle over to the left, and then up into the bottom of the meter box here. I would actually prefer going into the bottom of the meter box. The automatic transfer switch that I have been looking at is priced around $300. However, it is about 8 inches deep, which is rather thick to mount inside of a standard depth NEMA 3 exterior box. So I'm uncertain at this point how that will play out. I may have to mount that size of transfer switch inside the house near the load center. Here I am about to install the ground cable, and I just wanted to show again that I replaced the original chassis ground terminal with a larger size to accommodate a 4-gauge wire. I start by removing the cover plate on the access box. First, I feed it through the horizontal opening into the access box. Just as I'm feeding it downward, I realize that the ground clamp that I purchased has to be put onto the ground rod first before I feed the wire through the conduit. So give me a moment while I undo this conduit section.
Coming out, there we go.
Now that it's off, I gotta slip it off the rod. Give me a second here.
Get that off.
Now that it's removed, I then mount the clamp onto the rod and piece the conduit back into place. Give me a moment since I have to do it one-handed.
Anyway, get that on there. Then I put this pipe back on. And this pipe is just to make the installation look better.
Bear with me as I feed the cable and tighten the clamp with one hand. After the cable is clamped to the rod, I make an attempt to feed the excess into the case of the generator. But unfortunately, I cannot do it one-handed. So let me set down the camera while I feed it in, and I'll get back to you. So I got it fed through. It's amazing what you cannot do with just one hand. Before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and replace the cover on the access box. Okay, now I'm going to cut the ground cable to length and leave just a bit of extra length for relief. As you insert the cable into the ground clamp, be sure to feed it into the right place before you tighten it down. This cable clamp that you see here, I purchased when I thought I was going to need to use the ground as my neutral line. It was here that I was going to attach a neutral wire to be fed into the 1 1/4" conduit. Since I have it, I'm going to go ahead and mount it to the ground cable in case I need to use it for something in the future. Now that that's complete, let's move to installing the 1 1/4" conduit. I have a hydraulic pipe bender that I'm going to use to make 2 bends in the underground section. I want to make it without any joints underground. I was going to attempt to describe my method of measurement to achieve the correct dimensions with 2 sweeping bends, but it was too difficult to describe. Just pick up what you can as you watch me bend it. Now I am setting the conduit to test the fit. I decided that no matter what scenario I face with the transfer switch, I want to feed the conduit into the underside of the meter box. It seems to fit as planned. I want to go ahead and get this underground section buried in place, so I decided to stub it out, which will give me multiple options during the remaining install. Here I am working out where to cut and thread the stub. Now I'm threading the conduit stub. 1.25 inches is the maximum pipe diameter that my threader can cut. The larger the diameter of the pipe, the longer it takes to thread it. It requires a lot more torque than when threading smaller diameter pipe. To cut the threads as cleanly as possible, I keep reversing the threader to clear out the chips from the cut. Here I am threading on the access box. I applied Teflon tape to the threads just to keep it watertight. The stubbed out conduit and access box are now in place, and now I am backfilling the trench. As I'm backfilling, you may notice that I coated the upper stub with cold galvanized paint. This was to make the surface look more uniform and to more closely match the adjacent conduit. I'm using a tamping bar to fine-tune the placement of the stub in order to get it plumb and square. This is achieved by packing the dirt in strategic places around the conduit to shift it where it needs to be. It helps to receive likes to my videos so that the YouTube algorithm will give my videos more exposure. So please hit the like button. Hopefully, by the next episode, I should be installing the transfer switch and running cables. Stay tuned for that upcoming episode. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. And be sure to click the notification bell to be notified of new videos. This is Sir Do It All, signing out.